there's a new Gallup poll that's just released in the last week that, among other things, explored the question, differences between Democrats and Republicans about whether or not you trust what it is that you see. And the basic message of this was, a generation ago, there was almost no difference between Democrats and Republicans about trusting the news. Now there's an enormous gap, and Republicans are far, far, far less likely to trust what it is that they see in the news than Democrats are. I mean, how much of this do you think really comes down to a suspicion about the source of the funding, about who it is who's paying for it? That a sense that you get what you pay for, that people are paying for results, that the different parties trust differently what it is that they see because they have underlying assumptions about who it is who's responsible for producing the news that they're watching. Steve, if I could ask you to start.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're the target of that criticism, and it's occasionally tied to money. Usually George Soros is the bad guy, and we don't get any money from George Soros, but who's counting? But I think the question of money is a second-level problem for those people who distrust opposing viewpoints. I think it's at this point, it's not scientific or anything. But I think we are living in this partisan tribal moment in American politics, where there's a belief system, and then you go find the facts to justify the belief system, rather than the other way around.
Linda, I saw you nodding your head, and then I wanted to ask Nick the same question.
I mean, I think fake news really isn't about news at all. It's really about polarization. We do public opinion polling at PPIC, and we do a statewide poll. And in the last several years, we found that polling on climate change, that used to have bipartisan consensus that climate change is happening, is real, and the state should address it. It has now become a completely polarized issue, and with Republicans and Democrats in terms of their belief in it and in terms of their belief that action should be taken. And that is a startling change on an issue that we all thought, or many of us thought, was settled science.
Nick?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is the technology issue that Linda was talking about at the beginning, which is like fake news in many forms has been a thing since as long as news has been a thing, but Facebook and Google have not been. In 15 minutes, Facebook reaches more people than the biggest newspaper the world has ever produced can reach. And they are profit-driven platforms that rely on the echo chamber and the filter bubble, and you are just self-reinforcing all day long, over and over again. I think the first thing that like consumers need to do if they want to fight this is like think actively about what their media sources are and how they can diversify them. But that, I think, really is part of the problem here. And Facebook and Google have done a lot publicly to say that they're trying to fight these things, but like ultimately, they are profit-driven businesses, and the more time you can keep someone on your site and the more advertising revenue you can generate, the better. It comes like the great story of the 2016 election is that you would Google popular vote, and the top Google result is that Hillary Clinton lost.
I would argue that there are more that Facebook and other social media companies can do. There are engineering solutions here, but there has to be public pressure brought to bear for those to happen. There are ways to make sourcing more visible. There are ways to do fact checks. You can't edit a tweet, for example. And you can imagine if you use Twitter, how would that look? I refuse to believe that there's not an engineering solution to that if there's the will and the pressure to make one.
So just to add on to what you were just saying, I actually was talking to someone today who is very much involved in that discussion, and there is a project underway called the Trust Project that will be launching a tool with several leading media outfits and some of the platforms, Google and Facebook, they hope, that will signal to readers based on certain kinds of criteria the trustworthiness of the source. So it's a very challenging First Amendment navigation to make because you do have platforms with essentially monopoly power, and where the algorithm that's shaping what we see is considered a trade secret. and they're not regulated properly. So all of those things militate against the platforms doing the right thing because there's no leverage point. It's a purely voluntary thing. And this trust project may be at least an initial lever to start to put some light into how these decisions get made.